Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Transition to the Trades presented by USO and the Generation T team. It's a skilled trades movement powered by Lowe's Military Associates. My name is Fred Stokes, and I'm a member of the USO Board of Governors. Also, I work for Lowe's. I am a Senior Vice President of Pro Sales and Services. And also, I'm a Navy veteran. So for all those Navy veterans out there and active duty, hello to you. Glad to have you on tonight, as well as other military members. Lowe's and the USO have a 10 plus year relationship that's really been focused on the military community, typically honoring veterans and supporting workforce development as well as affordable housing. 2020 is no different. As we have in other years, we're honored to bring you something different, which is virtual workshops like these that the USO centers worldwide present. Today, in this particular meeting, you'll hear from industry professionals on making the transition to the trades profession by 2028. If you think about it, in 2028, there will be over 3 million unfilled jobs in the skills trades area. And despite the recent economic challenges, the construction industry remains very strong and will be an important part of the country's economic recovery. Generation T was founded by Lowe's in 2018 to help revitalize the skills trade and also create career opportunities for people like yourselves. It's a collaboration of over 80 nationwide partners working to influence American public to challenge and change the perception of the trade skills. The world of skilled trades professionals is probably much different than what you might think. Today, advancements in technology will help us build bigger and stronger. If you really think about, or you're curious about what your future might look like, I invite you to follow along, and we'll show a video here in a few minutes that shares a little bit more about Generation T. What I will also share with you is this. I think whether you're a military veteran or if you're currently in the military, or you might be a spouse of someone in the military and you've really been the support of a military member, there's often challenges that you run into, especially getting out of the military. I recall I was an E5 and AZ, and as I started filling out applications and everything else, it was really hard for people to understand what my skill sets were, or to be able to transition them over into corporate America. That was one aspect. But what you'll find is that as you start to look deeper, your skills are extremely transferable. But if you think about the trades industry as in a general, today, unlike when I was in high school, there were things like carpenters, you can go to mechanic shops and all those different things. A lot of those resources have been removed from schools. And one thing that people may not realize is that these are really good jobs that pay good money day in and day out. And those trades are diminishing every day. And so there's a skilled workforce that's there and jobs just waiting for people. And there are people in the military or spouses of military members that have some skills that can transfer over into the trades. All you gotta do is learn a trade. It's not often we know what we want to do. And sometimes we get into the military because we really don't know what to do. But what I will share with you is that's been my life. And you could have never told me in a million years that I would be a senior vice president of a Fortune 50 company. But that was years after going into the military at 17, becoming a law enforcement officer after that, getting my undergrad degree, getting my MBA, and eventually getting with the FBI, working as a special agent. I never thought I'd be in retail. But after the Bureau, I did go into the retail environment and covered many different jobs. But all of that is because I just kept developing myself. And I think this is a really, really great opportunity for everyone to really take a look at the particular trade and see, is this an opportunity for you? Is this something that you can do? I can guarantee you this, if you step in it now, you won't be looking for jobs that often. There are many professionals out there that are looking for skills trades to work in the industry. So I invite you to take a look at this Generational T video, and I hope you enjoy this opportunity tonight. And if you want to look me up and ask a question, I'm available for you. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I am Fred Stokes. And so just look me up and I can answer any question that you might have. But again, I thank you all. And I thank also the USO for giving me the opportunity, and Lowe's as well. Have a great night and have a good time.
They said our capes didn't show to enough class to be heroes. They said we were the butt of the joke because we didn't attend their Ivies. But they forgot to mention, debt is not the prereq to living the dream. You don't have to lean on a desk when you have the drive to design your own league. By design, these hands summon creativity. Technology and trade, two converging paths, Mother Earth and Mother Board, shaping the terrain for the next generation. We are the rightful journeymen, the waymakers. When the banks crash and the stocks fall, we set the bearings straight, scrape our knees on sunbeams, hold families together within the framework of our mind, turn businesses into our business. With the vision that keeps the lights on, we build a better world out of thin air. This is the what if for the future masters of trade. The electricians and bricklayers, solar power technicians, energy auditors, tiny home builders for the ones who don't care about the color of a collar. Craftsmanship is a calling. What if the naysayers were so worried about making it in society, they forgot to value the hands that make the society? What if you could live the life you've always dreamed right from where you are? Your career choice isn't a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of knowing what you can do. There's work to be done. Are you ready?
Are you ready? I hope you're ready. If that didn't get you motivated, I feel the energy now. I'd love to introduce to you now Jason Burns from the Lowe's team. He is their Senior Manager for Pro Customer Engagement. He's going to talk to us a little bit more about what Lowe's is doing to rebuild the skilled trades with Generation T.
Thank you, Danielle, and welcome everybody. It's great to be with you this evening and talk to you a little bit more about the skilled trades and what we're doing here at Lowe's to help stand up, rebuild, and revitalize the skilled trades. As you saw in that video, that's our anthem video for Generation T and really our calling card, so to speak. Generation T was started by Lowe's back in 2018 and was started for one reason and one reason only, and that's rebuild and revitalize the skilled trades. As Fred mentioned just a little while ago, there are, by 2028, going to be over 3 million unfilled jobs in the skilled trades. And this is all born out of a labor crisis that's happening in this country right now, simply because of the fact that we haven't put an emphasis over the past 30 to 40 years on blue collar jobs and blue collar jobs being successful. As a result of that, some of you may benefit from that. The skilled trades are really a great industry to get involved in right now. People are becoming very successful, building out businesses, in doing some wonderful things in the skilled trades, and the earning potential is really up to you, so to speak. You know, we've seen people who have started in the skilled trades, gone through their training, their apprenticeships, worked for 3 or 4 years, saved a little money, built their skills up, and then ventured off and started their own businesses. And within 10 years, 15 years, they've grown a very large, very successful business in and around the niche that they're looking at. So Lowe's, what we're doing here, it's very interesting. If you go to the next page, we'll talk a little bit more about the program and how it got started. And you see, we put together a little slide here to talk a little bit about the numbers and the problems to give you a little bit more of an overview. 46% of construction firms say that they've increased in-house training due to the skilled trade shortage. And you know, what's really interesting is I read an interesting stat the other day that 74% of all construction businesses say that they've scaled back work, they've skipped on work, or that they've been impacted in some way, shape, or form by the labor shortage, which is just absolutely incredible. There are a number of reasons why we got to this point, but mainly it has to do with the fact that we have a little bit more of an aging workforce right now. And we haven't done enough to replenish that workforce. And as the economy grows, as industry grows, you know, the need or the demand for these jobs continues to grow over time. What's really interesting is that, you know, over the past 9 months, we've all felt the impact of COVID. We've seen the economy fluctuate. In certain sectors and certain industries of the economy have been hit rather hard. But what's interesting is that the construction industry still continues to thrive and still continues to grow and continues to outpace itself year over year. So the demand in the construction industry is still up. New home sales are still up. It doesn't look like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. So the demand for these types of jobs is only going to continue to grow. Next slide. So Generation T was, like we said, created back in 2018, and it started off as a digital first campaign where we wanted to create not an advertising campaign, but a cultural movement to really help rebuild and revitalize the skilled trades, but mainly change the perception in and around the skilled trades. And if you talk to most folks, they probably don't have a favorable look at the skilled trades from a career perspective because of some of the perceptions they may have about the skilled trades, because they think the work is too hard, or it's dirty, or it's, you know, just not as appealing maybe as sitting behind a desk or white collar work. But what we're finding is that young people are really starting to gravitate towards this work a little bit more. And part of the reason for that is because of this entrepreneurial spirit. Being able to build things and create things with your hands is something that the trades really lends itself to. And so through Generation T, we've built and structured a program that, rather than focusing on training, we're focusing more on how do we change that overall perception and change people's definition of the skilled trade. So rather than thinking of somebody in a ditch somewhere just shoveling dirt all day, how do we get them to think about it from the standpoint of how trade and the skilled trades are merging together? How do we get them to look at it from the standpoint of building things with your own hands and that entrepreneurial spirit? And we've been fairly successful over the past 2 years with this campaign, winning an American Advertising Award just 2 years ago, and seeing people's lives change for the better as they go on and they learn a little bit more about the skilled trades. Next slide. So tonight specifically, we're going to be talking about HVAC. heating, ventilation, air conditioning, something that I'm sure that you're all aware of. As you can see by the slide here, the 10-year projected job demand, almost 400,000 new jobs in the HVAC industry over the next 10 years, which is really astounding. It's a great career field to get into. And our guest a little bit later is going to talk you through a typical day in the life and what the HVAC industry looks like now. But as you can see, good median salary there at $57,000 a year. And of course, that's a median salary. Training required is 6 months to 2 years. Next slide. And you may ask, what are the duties of an HVAC tech? Well, several of them listed here: install, clean, and maintain HVAC systems, inspect and test HVAC systems and components, repair and replace systems, and then recommend maintenance to improve system performance. I don't know about you folks, but where I live here in Charlotte, we do annual servicing on our HVAC systems here in our home. And I can tell you that through the years, especially over the past 7 or 8 years, it's become increasingly more difficult to find somebody to come out and service. It's not that there aren't enough companies, but rather than taking a day or two to get on somebody's schedule, people are scheduling their maintenance about 6 or 7 weeks out here. And part of the reason for that is because we don't have the technicians available or the skilled labor available to come and meet the demand of what's happening in the marketplace. In terms of skill set, you'll look over here, highly technical, creativity, not so much. A lot of this is pretty straightforward. Problem solving, you gotta have great problem solving skills. And there's definitely a variety when it comes to the job. Next slide. So before I turn it over to Mike and his guest tonight, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a program that we have here at Lowe's. It's called Track to the Trades, and this falls under the Generation T umbrella, and it's a great program for people who are looking for a pathway to grow into the skilled trades, but maybe still need a little bit of the training before they do that. So basically what Track to the Trades is, it's a program for associates at Lowe's. If you have been with Lowe's for 6 months, you're eligible for Track to the Trades. It's the first of its kind national skills trades pre-apprenticeship program. It focuses on 5 different trades. HVAC is one of those. The others are carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and appliance repair. But once you've been with Lowe's as an associate for 6 months, you can apply to go into Track to the Trades into one of those 5 programs, and Lowe's will pay for you to get your education and certification in those programs. And then when you've done and you've completed that program, we will, through our contacts and networks within the Lowe's service provider networks, will help you to find a job outside of Lowe's and start your career in the skilled trades. So if there's anybody that's interested in learning a little bit more about that from a Lowe's perspective and becoming a Lowe's associate, we'd be happy to take those questions a little bit later on. So with that, that's a very brief introduction into Generation T. Next slide. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Generation T, please feel free to go to our website, which is wearegenerationt.com. And you can get a little bit more information there, or feel free to reach out in the chat and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Mike Piper, and he's going to introduce you to Doug Smiley. Mike?
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. Man, Track to the Trade sure sounds like a great way to save that GI Bill to me. But yeah, so I'm Mike Piper. I'm the military recruiting strategist here at Lowe's. I'm extremely excited to be here tonight, and I'm extremely excited to be joined by my, we'll say, co-host for our fireside chat today, Doug Smiley. Doug is with Lennox, and he is a HVAC technical trainer. So Doug, why don't you go ahead and just tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and what you do with Lennox.
Mike, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. As Mike mentioned, my name is Doug Smiley. I am the technical training manager at Lennox. my job entails developing all of the training, all of the technical training for Linux that we put out. We put out about 600 different training assets, from instructor-led classes where you're in a classroom with an instructor and equipment, to also everything that we do online. And now the virtual stuff, right? We're starting to get into the virtual reality, the augmented reality, and just training as a whole. And I take care of all of North America.
Fantastic. So before we jump into questions, I want to go ahead and take a second, do some housekeeping real quick. If you go to the question and answer section down in the bottom, which should be right here in the middle, you can submit questions for Doug, for myself. We're going to answer as many questions as we can today. That's the point of this. And then the second part, there's a little chat side too. Tell us where you're coming from. Tell us where you're tuning in from. I know, it's late on the East Coast. We're in Charlotte, so it's about 7:25. I know a lot of energy, but maybe you're in Germany or Japan. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Looking forward to seeing where everybody's tuning in from, as well as those questions. We're going to take as many questions as we can. But Doug, I think I'll start because I was a mechanic in the Air Force, right?
Sure.
I spent 6 years, HR now. Not what I, totally different. Did the jump. But tell me, how would a service member or military spouse get started in pursuing a career in HVAC?
So, like a lot of people, most people don't wake up in the morning and go, hey, guess what I want to be when I grow up? It's an HVAC technician. That just does not happen. If it does, I'm going to say you're a little weird. But unless you were born into it, right? So sometimes people that have families that were born into it, and their aunts and their uncles and dads and so on and so forth had companies, you can fall into it that way. But most of us bump into the industry, or we back into the industry, not even knowing what we were looking for. And that's how it happened for me. There are several ways that you can get into the industry. Because of the huge technician shortage, this is one of the few industries where you can literally just walk into a dealership and start having that conversation. And I know that's a little prehistoric in the way you go about it, but I highlight that to highlight how much of a demand there is for wanting to find someone who is willing to work, right? The training will come, and most companies will assist or invest in training, because the problem is we don't have enough qualified, skilled labor. There's a lot of people that want to do it and try to do it, but there's not a lot of people who always do it right. And that's what it's about, right? That company spent a lot of money. So that's one area you can do it. The other way is when, searching online. When you go to online, LinkedIn, Facebook, joining HVAC groups on some of the social platforms, always have leads and things like that to getting started into the industry. Programs like what Lowe's is doing to kind of connect dealerships and companies through their network with people that are looking for viable employment. I always tell the story, as long as there's a person who has a want to and a desire, not looking for a handout, because it's hard work, right? It's not easy. But as long as you have a want to and a desire, you can be successful in the industry of HVAC. The only people that lose in HVAC are the ones that quit.
Perfect. No, fantastic. And I think Jason hit on it. It takes, maybe a month, 2 months to find an HVAC individual to come service our air conditioners here in Charlotte. Sure. But you kind of hit on it a little bit, but tell us just a little bit about a typical day in the life of an HVAC technician. I mean, what is it that you're doing? And what are you, going about doing? Are you visiting customers' homes like that? Do you have to do that, or can you do other areas?
So there's a couple of things, and this is where it's about awareness. I think a lot of people like to pigeonhole the HVAC industry, and we only think about it in terms of service technician and installer, if you will, right? But a day in the life is, early mornings, 7, 8 a.m. your day starts, or so, usually long.
Oh, hey, Doug, you went on mute just randomly. There we go.
Am I back there?
Yep.
Yeah, or because of seasonality, you will find yourself having shorter times. But a typical day in the life, you're going to work Monday through Friday. Sometimes you'll have an on-call or rotation where you have some weekends or some on-call scheduling. But most companies spread that throughout their workforce. Now, if you're at a smaller company, you'll have to work that out. But for the most part, there's some type of on-call rotation. And every company does it different. Some companies have a 24-hour service. Some people just have extended hours until, say 10 p.m. or so. It just depends on the company. The cool part about a day in the life of is you're going to go on average between 4 to 6 homes a day, right? That's 4 different adventures that you get to go on. I was one of those individuals that every time I knocked on someone's door, it was really an adventure of who I met that day. I met some of the most interesting people that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to come into had I not had those experiences on a daily basis. And contrary to that belief, most people are excited to see you. It's not an industry full of disgruntled customers. Think about it. If it's summertime, it's 100 degrees outside and the AC goes out, you are happy about the individual who comes to turn that back on and get it fixed for you. All right. So that's a day in the life.
Well, fantastic. And you touched on a little bit there with, the residential piece. And we did have a question here that I'm going to ask to the commercial piece. Like when I was an aerospace ground equipment mechanic in the military, the stuff that we worked on was not residential, right? It was more of your very large ice rink type air conditionings.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit, just what's the difference between residential versus commercial? And is there a large significant difference?
There isn't a large significant difference. When we get to the theories and principles of how this stuff works, and you start talking about the theories of refrigeration and the theory of heat transfer and how air moves and flows and how it acts, that's the basis for all air conditioning, whether it's residential or commercial. What differs is the size of the tools and the size of the parts, right? On the commercial stuff, it's just bigger. It's just more of it. But for the most part, if you understand the fundamentals, then you'll be successful. A lot of people relate that to football, right? There's not the fundamentals of football are the same from Pee Wee all the way to the NFL. Just the game's a little bit bigger.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you just kind of touched on it with, theory of heat transformation or transfer, right? And that kind of those skills or that training that's needed. So tell us just a little bit about what kind of training would someone have to have or get to become an HVAC technician? So
there's a couple of licenses that you have to have. Every state has a certain license that you have to have in order to work on the equipment. The EPA regulates how we handle refrigerant. And so across the board, you'll have to have some type of EPA certification. Those tests are not very expensive and relatively easy if you study, right? Depending on your state and the laws and requirements that state has, you may have to apprentice. So you may have to have a journeyman's or an apprenticeship or something like that in order to qualify. And so you just have to check your state to see what that is.
Perfect.
You don't necessarily have to go to a technical college or enter into a traditional school type form in order to receive training. Companies like Lennox and there are other institutions across the country that specialize specifically in training for HVAC, and usually those programs are accelerated. So even on the slide before, we talked about kind of 6 months to 2 years, and that's kind of the standard across the board. There are some programs that are 6 to 8 weeks long, and you can be on week 10, you can be receiving a paycheck.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's, I think, one of the great things about HVAC is that there's so many different ways to get in. Sure. There's so many ways to, become an HVAC technician, and you can go as fast as you want. You can go as slow as you want. It just depends on what you want to do and where you want to go within the field. And speaking of the industry and thinking about, those opportunities, what are you know, those opportunities that are coming, and what is the growth opportunity in the industry here in the future?
So even when we talk about HVAC, my mind is starting to change a little bit after being in the field, you know, and are in the industry for 19 years now. I'm starting to see things and the landscape a little differently. So long we've talked about the equipment, working on the equipment, what it's like to be a service technician or installer. The truth of the matter is I work for the manufacturer. I don't really deal with equipment or customers in the same way that I used to, but that started because I was a technician. And so the HVAC service technician path can be a gateway to a career path to a ton of other stuff. Not to mention all of the tools that we use in the industry. My tool bag has $1,500 worth of tools in it. And then all of the other stuff that I use for that, the pumps and the tanks, they're all made by manufacturers. A lot of times being a service tech can be a gateway into even working for tool manufacturers. Why? Because you have the base knowledge of how it works and you can relate to the customers as to what tools are good for the job. Then you start to look at emerging technology. So as we start to, homes become smart and we start to integrate, you know, televisions and cell phones and refrigerators, we're also doing that with HVAC equipment. So it's becoming more technical in knowledge. You can now operate your HVAC equipment with your cell phone. That can be connected to the thermostat, which can be connected to the television and so on and so forth. So whatever your interest is, you know, you can use that and start to develop a career path into so many other areas. You don't have to feel trapped that I need to be solely a service technician. Now, I'm partial to service techs because that's what I was. And so I like it. If that's where you get in at, you can make that into as lucrative as a career as you choose, as long as you're willing to continue to improve and develop yourself.
Fantastic. And great point, because actually right before this, I really wanted to make this feel like a fireside chat. So I definitely pulled my cell phone out and I kicked up the heat over here, getting a little cozy, but, and it's not, you know, it's a very much technically advanced industry that is going towards that route, right? I mean, sure. I think all of skilled trades is going that route, right? So it's not necessarily having to be in the weeds all the time. You're definitely, or on site, there's definitely different ways, different paths. Everybody's different. Everybody takes a different path. I mean, you know, like you said.
Well, I think what technology does is it allows us not to be on an island by ourselves, right? So, you know, when I started in the industry, they threw me in a truck and they sent me on my first call and I was scared to death, like out of my mind. Like I'd been to school and I knew it, you know, but it's different when it's in real life. We didn't have the technology at that time that could assist me with troubleshooting. So there's a lot of things that I can do from just the growth of technology that make me more efficient at my job. And I don't have to feel embarrassed that I don't know, right? And call my service manager or call somebody. I don't have to have my ego crushed, right? I can just look it up, right? I can just punch in some numbers on my phone, or even the tools that we use. We have gauges that when you hook them up to the system, they give you a complete readout of what's going on in the home, verbatim. We used to have to be able to articulate that on our own. Now we have instruments that tell you everything that's going on. You just be able to communicate it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because I see it every day when it comes to, and not just HVAC. I think you see it in a lot of the skill trades. And I think the Generation T video kind of points to that a little bit, right? Technology is starting to merge with the skilled trades to help the skilled tradesmen understand the technology a little bit better, understand the job a little bit better, and be more efficient, right? Because as we all know, time is money. And when you're looking at this, right? So, and it's fantastic that it's not, you know, there's a lot of technology involving into it. So let's take a little bit of, and I don't know, this is going to be one that I'm going to say we may answer together, but it is a question that we got. And I know you and I have talked about this before, but it is a question about receiving that HVAC training via a fantastic program that the military offers, and that is DoD SkillBridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you and I have talked about this, right?
Sure.
So I do want to answer the question about the SkillBridge opportunities and opportunities to get your training via SkillBridge. And I know you guys have done stuff with the Department of Labor before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, so I'll kind of answer this real quick and just say, with the SkillBridge umbrella, check out the DoD SkillBridge site. There are companies that do offer that, but you can do a one-off at any point. So if you want to do a one-off apprenticeship with Linux, or you got somebody else, you can do one-off apprenticeships and internships with DoD SkillBridge program to where you can get that training. So I will answer that question, and that allows you to do that before you get out.
Yeah, and then Linux, we'll partner through our dealers to make an avenue where you can actually have that employment and get your training all kind of in one bucket.
Perfect. All right, so little curveball, a little different question. So let's talk a little bit about safety in the industry, because there's a question that I have here that is there a industrial safety aspect related to the field in HVAC? And I know you touched on it a little bit. I know a little bit about your refrigerant that you're using, right? And the safety requirements around that. But can you go through just a little bit about some of those safety related aspects that are needed for HVAC?
So there was a study done, and I might have been maybe 10 years ago. And out of all of the people in the United States tested to find out who was the best match to go into HVAC with 88% approval, it was military personnel or returning veterans. The reason why is because of the high attention to safety. So depending on your state, all safety regulations for every state and buildings always take place. So depending on whatever OSHA cards you may have, or OSHA exams or certificates that you may have, those would be applicable. As you get into the different sources, for example, there are safety issues that regard refrigerant and what types of refrigerants you can use, how you can vent the refrigerants, how do you store the refrigerants, how do you carry the refrigerants. When you start to talk about brazing, oxy and acetylene, we have OSHA standards for that have to apply to this, that apply to our industry. When we go into combustion, on the furnace side, and we start to talk about, parts per million in air, what's healthy airspace and what's not, depending on the size of the room, all of those deals go into place. That's simply on the service side. Then when you turn to the installation side, are you going through a load bearing wall? What licenses do you have to have for that? Is it an attic install versus a closet install versus a crawl space? And so throughout the installation process and the service process, there are quite a few safety regulations that must be followed. And if they're not followed, a couple things can happen. One, you can void the homeowner's warranty for the piece of equipment. And two, you can just get into some bad stuff if they're not followed. So they're not so difficult that you won't know what they are, right? You're not going to be out on the job and there's going to be 121 things and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? That information is readily available to it. And as long as you follow it, you're going to be in a good spot.
Perfect. Yeah. Great suggestions. And I know, obviously whenever you're in someone's home too, right? You've kind of got to make sure that you're thinking about the safety as you're doing that, and you're doing that install or even doing the technician piece, right?
Well, yeah. And then we didn't even talk about personal safety. You're talking about the equipment and the gloves that you wear, your eye protection, all of those things, gloves for your hands, eye pro. In some instances, especially if you start talking commercial, right? Most of that's going to be hard hat, toes, you got your lockout, tag outs. And so, yeah, there's quite a few safety regs that have to be followed.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you just kind of moved over to the commercial side there real quick, which kind of leads to one of the questions we just got in here from the audience. And it's, would you say it's best that someone interested in HVAC would be good at independent work, Most often when I've needed HVAC support at my house, it's been a single person. But can you touch on that a little bit? Is it always a single person, or is there team aspects to this? Kind of hit on that a little bit for me.
A lot of times it depends on how the company is set up. So a lot of times when you see a single person, it's because one, they're good at what they do and they can handle most things on their own, right? Two, the size of the company. Just either a lot of companies maybe only run 5 to 7 technicians. That's more average. Companies with 30 and 40 technicians is not the norm, right? So that 5 to 7 range of technicians is probably is more along the lines of what's most popular. So just because of the number of techs they have, they can't afford to send out 2 people to one job. The other time, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to need to like being independent. There are a lot of companies that pair you, especially in the beginning of your career. So my first 6 months in the field, I rode along with someone. I didn't get my truck and started riding by myself on my own calls until 6 months after I finished school. So I finished school, I get hired at a company. Now I go for 6 months, as a ride along and a helper, if you will, until I was ready to go out on my own.
Perfect. No, that's great. And to the same thing here. So there's another question that came in kind of in the same, kind of a follow-up to it, but really just starting to look at it. It seems like as you're in HVAC, there's a lot of problem solving, right? There's a lot of problem solving that you're doing. So can you speak to some of the interests that a good HVAC tech should have?
So a good HVAC technician, in my professional opinion, has to have 3 things. One, you do need some technical prowess, right? You gotta like to tinker, right? So if you like tearing up stuff just to figure out how it works, it's probably going to be a good career for you. If you like challenges, maybe you weren't the type of person that tinkers, but somehow when you're challenged, you get this release of endorphins and you want to figure it out, right? That's probably going to be a fit for you. So you got to have some technical prowess. 2, you need to have some organization. And what I mean by that is, in order to be successful as an HVAC tech, you have to be able to organize your thoughts, which help you problem solve. And it doesn't seem like that's a skill that we would put out on the table as a major plus, but when it ties directly to the last skill that I'll mention, and that's you need to have a great attitude and be an effective communicator. A lot of people in our industry don't start out as effective communicators. They grow to that. And here is where the industry is changing a little bit. Here is where women and females are growing in popularity. For so long, it was seen as such a male-dominated industry, but there's a huge opportunity for females. And it was because companies realized we need people who can communicate to our customers. And so once you take the egos out of the way of, hey, just point me to your piece of equipment and fix it, companies realize that that's not what keeps customers. It's the customer experience. It's the customer service that goes along with it. And it's the ability to have conversation that makes the customer feel valued, and they understand the benefit of having your company provide a service. So when you look at all 3 of those things, you don't have to, for those things, you don't have to possess them all together. I think if you got one of the pieces, either you're a good communicator, you like to tinker, you got a great attitude, right? And you like challenges. If you've got one of the 4, then what you do is you step into the industry, and then as you develop the other 3, your income will increase along with it, right? And so I just think that it's a fantastic way And the attitude is, I got to stay there and park there a little bit too, because having a good attitude and a positive attitude when you're dealing with people is just so, that's a skill that goes across the board. It's not just within HVAC, right?
Yeah, I think that's a skill that is needed every day and everything you do. It doesn't matter where you're at and what career you're in. One is the attitude, but two, the effective communication, right? Even as we have military spouses on the line right now, we have service members on the line, we have veterans on the line. All three of those areas, all are great communicators. They have to be, right? They have to be in what they do, in either supporting the military, being in the military, or performing civilian jobs now. So I think you're right on the mark. So I think, Doug, do you have any last words you'd like to say before we move on to a quick slide and kind of wrap it up here?
Yeah. Just one. People always ask me. I've been in the industry for a while, and I've done everything from service tech to installer to what I currently do now at the manufacturer level. Running technical training. And they always ask me, has your view changed? Or, what do you think about the industry? And I think about where we are in this year of 2020 and what we've all experienced, and even how we're meeting in this format now. The one thing that I tell people is, as long as people occupy buildings and spaces, there will be a need for HVAC. It's essential. When things slowed down and the bottom fell out and nobody knew what the heck was going to happen, back in March, not one HVAC person missed a beat, because we had to go. And if you're really good at this, I tell my students that take classes, I tell them all the time, you'll get to a point where you don't interview because you need a job. You go interview because you're trying to figure out where you want to work. And that's a totally different thing, because if you get good at this and you put the time in and you don't mind working hard at it, you'll be successful. I took my whole family to Disney World on superheat and subcooling. And I say that because I'm blessed and not in a braggadocious way, but I've got 3 girls, and I don't know if you've ever been to Disney World, but it's extremely expensive. But it's because I'm not afraid of a lot of things in this world. I am afraid to tell my 3 daughters that we don't have something because Dad was afraid to try. And so as long as you are willing to try and give it some effort, you'll be good.
Oh, what fantastic advice. I love it. So to wrap up, we're going to go ahead and show a slide real quick and say, first, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
It's been fantastic to have Doug. I think I'm going to just tag you along and bring you along with all the rest of my presentations that I have for the rest of the week, man. Just going to be you and me. We're going to go travel the world together.
Cool.
But it's been great to have you with us. But we want to go ahead and give you guys some call to action. So obviously throughout this whole time, we've been learning a lot about HVAC. But there's several different actions you can take now. So you can go explore and learn more about the trade at wearegenerationt.com. You can connect with the USO transition specialist for help navigating the transition into the trade industry. All of them will be able to help you. And if you haven't been able to connect with a USO transition specialist, I highly recommend it. Fantastic program. Support before a year before you get out, a support for a year after you get out. So great program, great support. And then as always, we hit on track to the trades that Lowe's offers. So if you're interested in that and you'd like to work part-time at getting your certification, but also be able to work with Lowe's part-time at the same time, you can reach out to one of our Lowe's military recruiters at militaryrec@lowes.com. So there's 3 different ways that you can continue the discussion, continue exploring options into HVAC. But we appreciate you all stopping. And on behalf of Generation T and USO, thank you for stopping by. I'm going to turn it back over to Danielle here. But thank you for having us and thank you for enjoying this conversation tonight.
Yes, echoing the gratitude here, Mike and Doug, thank you so much for an amazing fireside chat. I'm seeing the reactions in the chat and just fantastic. Such amazing information shared. So From the USO, a huge thank you to our partners at Lowe's. What an amazing event. Hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did. One last link that I shared in the chat for you all is please do keep an eye on uso.org/MVP for our entire lineup of military virtual programming. In case you're wondering what that calendar looks like, if you have someone or if you yourself are also considering the plumbing trade, we are happy to continue this great series with Lowe's on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So we hope to see you there. And if not, have a fantastic rest of your week, everyone. This concludes today's event. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.